Welcome back to Following Noah on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 167, and we are ending part 3 of The Well of Ascension. Eliot, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We're getting pretty far along in this book. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on this chapter and these set of chapters and the book so far. I'm excited to talk about them.
Paul?
I'm also excited to hear what Elliot has to say then. Sounds interesting.
We have a couple different things to talk about this week. I'll let Eliot summarize, but last week set himself up in the city, so we're going to be dealing with some of the repercussions of one of your enemies, maybe friends to be, kind of settling into your city. And then we're going to get updates on the other two armies as well. So let's roll intro, and then we'll talk about chapters 34 through 38, the end of part 3 of The Well of Ascension. All right, Eliot, can you summarize what happens in this set of chapters for those of us who haven't read it recently?
Chapters 34 through 38 taking us to the end of part 3. We jump in right in the midst of all of the political maneuvering and, like you said, Set trying to get himself elected king, which, side note, distracted myself from my summaries. Elected king seems like
Yes.
a potential oxymoron to me. The fact that they're talking about gathering votes to determine who the king. Anyway, sorry, side note. So yeah, has arrived. Elend and crew are trying to figure out how they can maneuver against him, win some votes, that sort of thing. Vin struggles maybe a little bit with her relationship with Ellen throughout all these chapters, really, even culminating in the final one for sure. Zane attacks again, kind of becoming a recurring thing, but he attacks maybe a little harder this time. He's got his ATM going. It definitely seems a little scary there for Vin, but he does not kill her. It's good for our heroes. We learn a little bit more about Set. We have some interesting meetings with him, some scenes in between Sazed and Tindwyl, which I want to talk about with you guys because I had some thoughts and questions about those. Vin convinces herself that Captain Demu is not the Khandra, despite convincing herself that he was the Khandra last episode. So Vin cannot make up her mind. And then we end with a rather epic scene where they're trying to vote on king and they get attacked by assassins and Vin rather um, violently dispatches of them all. I might just put it that way. And then at the end of it all, with a slight confusing turn in the political rules, Lord Penrod gets voted as king.
Indeed. Sounds good. There's a scene at the end of this where Vin is fighting the assassins that I did not remember was in this book. So when I got to it, I was like, whoa. Whoa. So I'm curious to see the Eliot's thoughts on the graphic detail it goes into. But before we get there, Vin and Elend are talking in chapter 34, and Vin tells Elend about a poisoned well. Like there's a whole quadrant of the city that appears to like have dysentery or something. And apparently the well has been sabotaged and poisoned by someone. And Elend, in this conversation, he kind of dismisses Vin and says, "Oh yeah, I already knew about that." And Vin kind of takes it a little personal and says, "Oh, sorry. Like I didn't she gets a little awkward with it and thinking to herself, why didn't he tell me? Or why did we not have the communication level that I thought we did? He's clearly busy with all his king stuff, and I don't know everything there is to know about him anymore. So there's an interesting dynamic there. Did you guys pick up on that?
It is interesting, but I think it makes a lot of sense. They have an interesting relationship based off of their roles. He is like the king, or was the king, or is running to be the king. You know, that whole scenario. And she is like the Mistborn, the like warrior. You know, at this point they've had conversations, it's just a really difficult relationship. They've got multiple people on their door, like multiple armies on their doorstep. You know, they're probably not thinking about their honeymoon right now. You know, where should they go? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's just, given all their circumstances, it's difficult for them to focus on that. So
And I think it's getting into the classic change the world or be there for your family conundrum of is does Elend have to sacrifice his relationship with Vin in order to serve the people? I think that's a common problem that leaders come across, not just in stories, but in real life. In order to fully dedicate yourself as a servant leader to some cause, that requires a lot of commitment, oftentimes to the detriment of like friends and family around people, which is why leaders sometimes become kind of a lone wolf in some cases where they don't have time for relationships with others because they're busy saving the world. And I think Ellen's fighting that battle a bit.
I have a quote to read, which I was waiting to see if Eliot would put in the outline, and he didn't.
Uh-oh.
uh-oh.
It's after. Well, I'll kind of skip around a little bit. It's on page 402 of mine. Which, Eliot, do we have the same page count? If I mean, we don't.
Probably not.
We have different prints, but it's in chapter 34. Kind of like halfway through the chapter, maybe. I'll start it here. Elend, Vin asked, "I've thought more about the deepness." "That's wonderful, Vin," Ellen said, smiling at her, "but I really don't have time right now." Vin nodded and smiled at him. However, her thoughts were more troubled. He's not uncertain, like he once was. He doesn't have to rely on people like me for support. What would happen if he abandoned her now? He won't, she told herself. He's a better man than that. But good men had failed relationships, didn't they? People grew apart, particularly people who were so different to begin with. Despite her self-assurances, she heard a small voice pop up in the back of her mind. It was a voice she thought she'd banished. A voice she hadn't ever expected to hear again. Leave him first. Reen, her brother, seemed to whisper in her head. It will hurt less. Vin heard a rustling sound outside. She perked her up slightly, but it was been too soft for the others to hear. She stood, walking over to the ventilation window. 3 episodes ago, maybe, we had a conversation about voices in people's heads. And Eliot, I pushed you to think, who have we heard before Zane that has a voice in his head? And you said, well, it took you several minutes, and then you finally said,
like 2 conversations later,
yes,
I got back to
you, like 10 minutes later, you're like, wait a minute. So you did come up with Vin, but you said it's really hard to tell if this is just her inner dialogue voice or if this is just her insecurities kind of voicing themselves in her brother's voice. But you did mention that each time she hears of that voice, it's in her brother Reen's like word, I guess.
Yeah.
And I wanted to highlight this again because it comes up again, and it's still her brother's voice. It specifically says a voice she never thought she'd hear again. But she's had insecurities in this book up until this point. So I wanted to highlight this is something distinctly different.
You, you want to know what else is different?
Ooh,
Our copies of the book.
no way.
My copy of the book does not have that line.
No way.
It skips it.
What?
So half of what you just read is in
Okay.
my copy, and half of it is not. And I'm staring at this, trying to make sure I'm reading this correctly. But that line that you just emphasized, the whole "I thought I'd banished it, but then it was back," that's not in my copy.
It was
It just mine.
it was a voice she thought she'd banished, a voice she hadn't ever expected to hear again. Leave him first, Reen, her brother, seemed to whisper in her head.
So leave him first. Her brother Reen seemed to whisper, "It will hurt less," is all mine says. It says, despite her self assurances, she heard a small voice pop up in the back of her mind. Leave him first. Her brother Reen seemed to whisper, "It will hurt less."
Whoa.
Yeah.
It was a voice she thought she'd banished, a voice she hadn't ever expected to hear again.
And I noticed that section, but I didn't highlight it because it just seemed no different than any of the previous, you know, oh, there's a voice in her head that's written in the text differently than like Zane's voice in his head. Zane's voice actually gets like literal dialogue where it says, "God said, quotations, kill him."
Right.
Whereas Reen's voice in Vin's head is just kind of italicized as part of her dialogue.
Right.
But your copy seems to bring a little more attention to that than mine does, which is fascinating.
Now I'm looking at the copyright date to see whose is more recent. I assume mine is more recent.
Well, mine says copyright 2007, first edition 2007, but then says first mass market edition November 2019.
What?
So I'm assuming that's when this
So
was printed.
this is what mine says. First edition August 2007. First mass market edition June 2008.
So did he go back and take that out?
Did he take that line out?
Does it prove to be problematic?
Ah,
Interesting.
ah. Wow. Well, don't know what to or if I should read into that at all, but I thought I was going crazy if you as you read that there. But yes, that is firmly on the theory list is the voices in people's heads,
Yeah,
which I still feel regardless of this conspiracy we just uncovered, the the voices seem different when comparing from Zane to Vin,
sure. And I think they're supposed to.
which I do actually want and I do want to talk about Zane's voice in his head here in just a second. But yes, I've got my eye on the similarities there. But wow, missing line from my later edition. Weird.
Yeah, I really don't know what to how to transition out of that. That's crazy. That's not what I was expecting that conversation to go.
Weird.
So Zane shows up like right after that scene. Zane makes a noise that only her 10 enhanced ears can pick up, and then he full out attacks her with the intention to scare her and get her to burn ATM. Like she needs to feel that her life is in danger. I'm going to get you to burn ATM. And she doesn't. And so that's when he kind of stops and talks to her for a little bit and says, "You really don't have it, do you? You really don't have ATM." And that's when he finally believes her. But I wanted to highlight that specifically on a personal level between Zane and Vin. through this scene, it's now well established that Zane can kill Vin whenever he wants. It's now
He knows it.
right, and both of them know it. That there is now no question whether Vin's life is in danger. Vin's life is 100% in danger, and Zane knows it. So that power dynamic moving forward, I think, is going to be important. I don't remember if it will be, but if I were to guess, I think that power dynamic will be important. That Zane could use the "I could kill you and everyone you love right now." Nobody has had that leverage over Vin ever, because even when she, at the beginning of book 1, she didn't have anybody she cared about. So now that she does have people she cares about, and now there's someone who can leverage them against her, I think that's going to be a plot point moving forward between Zane and Finn.
I think you're absolutely right. Zane is now in the position of arguably the most power in the whole book,
Right.
of exactly what you just described. Zane can now threaten Vin or just kill her and take control of things by force. Very notably, he does not do that. He has been directly ordered by Strath Venture, go kill her, take my army of Alamancers with you, do whatever you have to kill her. Has that opportunity and doesn't take it. Now, the one thing maybe weighing the scales in our hero's favor is still Vin's secret weapon throughout this entire book, which is Duralamin.
Yep.
And her extra like super boost that she can pull that apparently no one else knows about yet. And so while ATM probably trumps Duralamin boosted pewter, that's still, I think, a secret weapon that Vin might have up her sleeve that could help.
Okay, now
And
go ahead. Finish your
you
thought.
might be going the exact direction that I'm going with this, which is, and because of Duralamin, if Vin ever gets even a little bit more ATM, she will be back in the driver's seat in the upper hand, because I would guess that Duralamin boosted ATM wins the day over just regular ATM.
Yeah. That's not where I was going with it, but that is another step. My question was Vin versus Zane. Vin is about to burn Duralamin, which Zane does not know about. Does ATM tell Zane about the Duralamin, which he doesn't know about?
Isn't that what is it? The bronze thing? I don't think ATM would show that there's a different source being used or something. It just shows the physical outcome of where she will be. Right.
Right. Like it shows all of the different things that you could do in response to what I'm about to do. But my question is, if Zane is burning ATM and Vin is about to Duralamin steel push a coin through my forehead and it's going to move 10 times faster than I'm expecting, would his ATM tell him that? Or would he not know because he doesn't know about Duralamin?
I would guess, just guess, that like Paul said, I think the ATM is just showing Zane the future in the physical space. It's just showing him a sneak peek at what's about to happen. And so he would see something that wouldn't make sense to him. It would be, wow, she's about to shoot a coin at me way faster than she should be able to do. It's not necessarily like, oh my gosh, she must have Duralamin,
Right.
but it could very well reveal, oh wow, she is doing something I've never seen anyone else do before. That's new. So could it reveal that she has something up her sleeve? Yes. Is it going to immediately make sense to him as, oh, she has another metal that I don't know about? Maybe not.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
could buy that. Like, it's about to reveal that she's about to jump half a kilometer in the air like she did in part 1.
Yeah.
How she can do that, I have no idea, but that's what she's about to do. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I will say, I think the important thing to know here, we've talked about how Zane is in the driver's seat. He has the power over Vin and all that stuff, right? But this is still Zane. And Zane is a complicated bundle of motivations and feelings right now. He comes and he does not kill Vin, and he still asks her to run away with him. His what he wants is for them together to just up and leave, do life just the two of them, just themselves. If they allied up, if they teamed up, like who is going to stop them? Like they are like the best warriors you can get. Like they really are the best. And so I don't know. So Zane kind of leaves with this like think about it kind of thing, right? Like asks Vin to consider it, to really think about it and consider. And I'm curious to know what y'all think. Like she doesn't show any sign of wanting to go with Zane. She's very much like, I like Elend and I will be staying with him even if you try to kill me because of it. Um and personally, like my I guess prediction, if you will, is that that would be the case. Like I don't think she would leave and go with Zane. Like they would run off. I don't think that's where the story would go. But it does show, like Zane is not just out to kill her or to gain power for himself. He really just wants to go away and I guess live a quiet life. Not really sure what he wants exactly, but I think they're kind of spared because of Zane's motivational issues, if you want to say.
I agree with you that Vin does not seem to have any attraction or appeal to Zane. That there doesn't seem to be any of that. Maybe a little bit, but I don't see it that much. Where I disagree with you is she's convinced that she still likes like and wants to be with Elend. I do think she still loves Elend, but she is very much beginning to question her place with Elend. Would it be better for me to leave him alone to do his king stuff and stop distracting him? Are we really meant to be together when we have so many of these differences? Because that's a point that Zane has brought up and purposely brought up is, does he really understand you? Do you really belong together because you two are so different? Is a phrase that Zane has brought up before. And I'm not convinced that that is a plus in Zane's favor. I do think in Vin's head that is a minus against Elend. I think she's beginning to doubt her compatibility with Elend.
Or yeah, compatibility potentially, or even just the maybe we're compatible, maybe we're in love, but maybe I'm just not right for him,
Right.
or maybe I'm distracting him from his cause, or maybe I don't deserve him. It might even tie back to the whole self-image thing
Yeah.
for Vin. It's she doesn't see herself as worthy of Ellen, so she'll in her mind consider cutting off for that reason and that reason alone. Now, I think in these chapters, as we're going to find out here, there starts to become more than just that. There starts to be things that Ellen is doing that maybe feeds into this even more. So I think it's multiple things.
Elliot, did you want to talk about Zane's voice in his head?
Oh yeah, yeah. We should talk about that real quick. Zane's got his weird voice in his head that says "kill things," and I noticed something specific in this chapter though. The voice is still there. We go into Zane's perspective for a little bit during the fight, and the voice is still there, but the voice says "kill him," and it's a little bit jumbled up because Zane is talking to Vin, but they're kind of talking about Elend. And so it seems like the voice is pretty clearly talking about Elend, kill Elend. But I kind of noted it as why is the voice not saying kill Vin?
Hmm.
We had other scenes with Zane where he just walks by a random person in the street and the voice is like, "Oh, kill him." And then he walks past a guard and the voice says, "Oh, kill him." And then he walks up to Straff Venture, "Oh, yeah, definitely kill him." And then he walks up to Vin. And what does the voice say? It doesn't say kill her. It says kill the last guy they were talking about, Ellen. So it's almost like I don't have much to go on this voice, but it's almost like Vin is invisible to this voice. It's almost like this whatever this being or voice or Zane's alternate personality or whatever it is wants to kill everything or everyone, but maybe specifically not Vin.
Hmm.
Why is that? Or am I just completely making things up and they were talking about Ellen, so it said kill him? I don't know. But the lack of kill Vin seemed noticeable.
The term you used, invisible, to the voice is an interesting one. That maybe it's not specifically avoiding Vin. Maybe it just doesn't know about Vin for some reason. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Should we talk about Set?
Or at least
Gonna make me
specifically his daughter.
upset.
Uh, uh,
You're welcome. You're welcome for that one.
Yeah, we can talk about all Rianne. You want to spell check that one, Paul? Go ahead.
I was gonna say I actually don't. In all honesty, I think they do a good job of, I imagine, of pronouncing it in the book. It never sounds quite like Orianne. It sounds
Right.
like Alrianne, which just sounds obnoxious.
Yes,
Honestly,
I do think it's a little awkward.
Alrianne Set.
Um, every time I look at it in the chapter summary Wikipedia page, I'm like, that is a weird name to choose.
I almost think about it as a group of people sometimes when I read it. Like, oh yeah, all those Riannes over
All
there.
Rianne, yeah. It's literally ALLRIANNE or something like that. All Rianne. Yeah, she's a no, is she a rioter? She's a rioter. Um
Rioter.
she's rioting Breeze, who's our soother, and rioting
Yeah.
his emotions toward her. So she is like we've gotten a couple questions about it. But and Breeze has always been like, no, there's nothing between us. Don't worry about it. But Vin discovers in this chapter, no, there's absolutely something between them. Even if it's just her chasing him, she is definitely interested. Because she's a rioter and she's trying to get him interested in her. So, that's how we find out that one.
And this turned into another one of those. Why in the world are not all the red flags raising immediately?
Right.
Then Vin discovers that Alrianne is an Allomancer who is manipulating Breeze, who appears to not realize that that's what she's doing. Then we go and we meet with Lord Set himself. Is this the guy that's Ashweather Set?
Yes. Ashweather Set.
Mhm.
Lord Ashweather Set, who has me very confused. I mentioned this at the end of last episode of his mannerisms have me a little thrown. But one of the things that they talk about that Set is very adamant about is that he apparently doesn't give a flip that they have his daughter in custody. And Ellen's like, You don't want her back?" He's like, "Nah, you can have her." And I'm like, "Okay, Finn at least has all the information here." Set doesn't care that his daughter is on the other side. In fact, even seems to be fully in favor of that idea. Alrianne showed up at a rather suspicious time. She's manipulating Breeze, getting him to feel emotionally, romantically connected to her against his will. And Vin doesn't say anything about this to anyone. Like, oh yeah, I guess she's just, over there manipulating Breeze. Like, how in the world does that not put her at suspect number one for anything?
Yeah. The things that trigger Vin's suspicion and the things that dissuade her suspicion are very interesting. So last week you mentioned that she immediately suspects Demu as the spy simply because she's thinking about the spy and then sees Demu. And then in this episode, she follows Demu to the Church of the Survivor, finds out that he's a devout member of the Church of the Survivor, and then that suddenly clears his name. Like, why? Okay, hold on. What if Demu was the Khandra? The Khandra would presumably maintain behaviors of Demu, and if Demu was a member of the Church of the Survivor, the Khandra would certainly continue to do that. So, why does this clear Demu's name in her mind? And then, yeah, why does anyway? There's some very interesting trains of thought for Vin and how she follows her instincts.
And I think they discovered the Khandra bones before Alrianne showed up.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm not saying that Alrianne is the Khandra.
right.
All I am saying is that she is highly suspicious at this point.
Yeah, and the fact that she is a rioter is supposed to disqualify her from being
True.
the Khandra anyway.
True.
But yes, you're still supposed to be suspicious of her just as a normal spy in general. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Vin needs to go to some serious like detective school or something.
or maybe Brandon Sanderson does. Because we're supposed to believe that Vin's like super suspicious of everyone immediately, and then there's random things like that where she doesn't care. A major thing that was brought up in this episode is Vin has an internal dialogue of, well, if Ellen can't get the kingdom back, well, that's good. Then him and I can just go run away together, go relocate somewhere, in the Southern Dominance. I don't know. So just go somewhere else and be together for the rest of their lives. Live happily ever after. And that's all Vin wants. And then it's reestablished in this chapter that is not what Ellen wants. Ellen wants to stay with the city and protect the city for the people of Luthadel, Ska and Noble alike. And he is going to fight for his throne as long as he can. And he has not asked Vin if she just wants to leave. Like that's not an option for him. He has not even considered it. So back to what we were talking about earlier, I think there are some major fissures opening between Vin and Ellen, and how they approach life, and their relationship together. So I just wanted to bring that up.
For sure on Vin's side of things. I'm wondering if Ellen might be about to get hit by a truck that he doesn't see coming,
Right.
which is Vin might, drop something on him like, "Hey, we've been growing apart for a long time. It's time we split." And Ellen's like, "Wait, what? I
Right.
thought we were close. I thought we were getting married next month." Like, I'm not sure he sees it coming.
Right. Well, and it's also worth mentioning that what Zane is offering is what Vin is imagining with Ellen. Vin wants to love Ellen. Vin wants to run away and get off the map with Ellen. And Zane is offering that exact thing just with him. And so that's an interesting dynamic as well.
That is, Trevor. I'm glad you brought that up because that's what I've been thinking. it's like this dichotomy of, do you want that environment? Do you want to run away and not have to worry about all these problems? Or do you want the person? Right? Do you want Ellen specifically? And like right now it is like she wants Ellen specifically. But she wants Ellen to do what Zane wants to do, as in run away, right? And so it is like, it's a weird thing. It's not a love triangle, but of like people liking different people at the wrong time. But it's them wanting different things at different times, if you will. It's like it's a weird kind of love triangle, you know. Like Zane wants the same thing that Vin wants, but Vin does not like Zane. Vin likes Ellen, but Ellen does not want what Vin wants right now. So it's like
And
a weird
It's
little
and Ellen is
conundrum.
completely oblivious of all of it. He has no idea,
Oh yeah,
like
that's true.
like
That's
what
true.
Eliot's saying. He has no idea that he's in a love triangle. He just likes Vin, and that's all he cares about.
Mm-hmm.
it's like a quantum love triangle. It exists in separate states at the same time, but at the same time at different times.
Yes.
How quantum mechanics works. Just go with it.
Okay. Eliot, I don't know if I've actually gotten your full take on this. What are your thoughts on the Church of the Survivor?
I I am glad you asked because I did jot some notes down about this, but did not include them in our outline because I assumed we were not going to have time to talk about it. But since you asked, I will happily weigh in on the Church of the Survivor. I noted that we definitely cannot get away, and this is probably intentional on Brandon's part, from the theme of using religion or religion being a key part of controlling the masses.
Hmm.
This idea that maybe religion exists for more than what religion says it exists for. Religion, we'll talk about some kind of faith, some kind of often spiritual belief, set of beliefs, people, maybe a god figure that's being followed, maybe a person, teachings, doctrine, all of that kind of fits into religion. But in Mistborn so far, we've seen religion also used as a political tool, religion used as a government, religion used as an excuse to do things, religion used as a way to distract the populace or get the people to do what you want, even though your motives aren't religious. And Church of the Survivor seems to be another kind of that. Kelsier intentionally created this, whether this is exactly what he meant or not, unsure. But Kelsier had Orsur, the Khandra, impersonate him on purpose to stir up religious fervor for their cause. The result has been Church of the Survivor, which seems a fairly innocuous thing in and of itself. Elland uses it for his purposes here at the end of the story, and maybe that's a little shady. But the Church of the Survivor, sure, they're passionate about what Kelsier stood for. They want to continue that legacy. They're attaching some spiritual significance for it. Okay. I can't shake the thought, though, of it is yet another governmental figure, in this case, Elland, using a religion as a tool to control people, to get them to do what he wants.
Yeah. At the end of the part, he doesn't he like swear into the Church of the Survivor like officially in front of the assembly or something? And
Basically, it's that scene is actually interesting, which we're going to get into it in a second. We don't hear what he says because we're in Vin's head as she's distracted by what's going on. Vin realizes what he's about to do, and then we're in Vin's perspective. We kind of pivot to, oh boy, here come assassins, and then we pan back to, and that's why you should vote me as king, says Elland. And it's like,
Ben's doing a little
yeah,
disassociation, I think, because um, Elend is uses the heir of the survivor as her title. And Vin's like, I don't care to listen to this. I'm going to. Oh, that guy doing over there? So, yeah, I do agree with you. What exactly did Elend, um, how bought in
Yeah.
is he to the Church of the Survivor, and is it just for politics, or is he actually signing into God, Kelsey, or dude?
And it's heavily implied that it's the former of what you
Right.
just said, that
Yeah.
he is speaking out in favor of the Church of the Survivor, even, stating that he's joining the Church of the Survivor without any actual religious motives, and that he's just doing it for political reasons
Just
to
to get
gather
the ska vote.
the support.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which definitely, definitely sullies Ellen's image. Image? Virtue? I
Virtue.
don't know. I don't know how it goes so far. Yeah. It's that in and of itself is not the evilest thing we've seen.
Right.
Far, 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 far from. I wouldn't even necessarily maybe argue that it's bad. However, we just finished last episode trumpeting the virtues of Elend in that he was willing to let himself be deposed as king to do the right thing. And now here we are with him kind of flirting with the line of ethical behavior for political gain.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting dynamic that minor. No, that's major. I was gonna say minor Stormlight spoilers, but I actually can't talk about this until later. Um, so I'll save it. Um, what about Tyndall? Tyndall was about to leave the city and claim impartiality between the conflict, and she's about to go. Oh, I need to go give these two other guys king coaching because I gave Ellen king coaching. Um, and then she like dramatically looks into Sazed's eyes and says, "Give me a reason to stay." Did you, Elliot? Did you see that coming or not?
I mean, it wasn't necessarily a surprise that they come from the same culture. They seem to have similar interests. It was even implied at one point a while back that there was some kind of history, friendship, something between the two of them. So, am I surprised that there's romantic attraction between them? Not really. Is it incredibly awkward? Yes, absolutely. Like it was the most intellectual romance scene I think I've ever read anywhere. Do they ever at any point say anything in there that you would see in a typical love, romance scene? No. I love the beauty of your eyes, or I can't resist your presence. I can't be away from you. I must be close to you. No, it's like, man, you are really good at information. I think you and I should help each other. Give me a reason to stay so that we can support the world together. They're like, "Oh my gosh, this is the most awkward romance scene ever."
I wish I
I
could.
think that's my favorite point of the evening, by the way. I think that's hilarious. I did not think of that.
I wish I could experience it again for the first time because this unfortunately this is something I did remember is that Tindwell and Sazed were love interests at some point. So by no means did this take me by surprise, but um I do think that's funny that you're reading into the when two uber scholars like each other, they have no idea how to express it.
I should have tried to find some quotes from the chapter because they were downright hilarious and awkward and the most, yeah, scholarly hoarding of a person ever. It was entertaining.
Anything else before we explode some assassin heads?
We actually should talk about Tyndall for a second
Okay.
because I do think she is very important and potentially going to be more important. And we actually learned some information, some history about her, which we should briefly talk about.
Yeah.
We actually learned it last a couple chapters ago, but we didn't have time to get to it last episode. So I wanted to bring it back up here. I want to say it's Sazed. somebody is talking to Vin. It's got to be Sazed. And he shares some interesting information about Tindwyl and how wrong of a person she is, and maybe a little bit of reason why she comes off a little bit harsh. Sazed lets us know, or Vin specifically, and us through Vin, that Tindwyl was basically forced into the breeding program of the Terrace, the Lord Ruler's breeding program, which I'm slightly confused by this, but I think I pieced it all together. Maybe you guys can help me out. We've been told in the past that the Lord Ruler controlled the breeding of Terrace people, which we've put together some pieces and concluded that that was because he wants to limit the genetic passing on of
Pharaoh,
feruchemy
Pharaoh Kimmy.
abilities.
Yep.
Right. He's trying to eradicate those abilities because he was able to use feruchemy and allomancy together to become immortal, essentially. So he's like, yeah, I got to make sure no one else can do that. So yeah, I'm going to make sure y'all don't create any more feruchemists. So, but the fact that Tindwyl was put into a breeding program where she was intentionally, forced to have children with many different males seemed a little bit counterintuitive to that at first. I was like, well, hold on a second. He's supposed to be stopping the passing on of genetic um, powers, but he's making them breed. I guess the conclusion there being he wants them to continue on, but he's just controlling exactly who they breed with so that they don't breed with any feruchemy power people. Is that what
I
that's supposed to be?
I thought it was a mistake in that she successfully hid her ferochemical powers, um,
Right.
and then wasn't. Yeah. Anyway,
And that that's the twist, right? Is so I guess Lord Ruler thought he had found a non-ferochemist and was like, "Oh, okay, you're not a ferochemist, so I'm going to make you bear all the children for these people because
right,
I'm sure you're not going to pass it on."
right,
But jokes on him. The twist was the Terrace people had successfully smuggled Tindwyl into that system, knowing that she was a feruchemist, and tricked him basically to helping them continue the feruchemy line. So
right,
Tindwyl now occupies this kind of strange position in that she endured something that sounds pretty awful, and yet her people view it as a major service to her people in that she was allowing herself to be abused, but at the same time, she's passing on her feruchemy genes to all these children that she bears,
right.
or maybe the potential for. Did I piece all that together correctly? Because it took me a little bit to wrap my head around it.
I think you're correct. I mean, I guess Trevor can be the final say on that, but I'm pretty confident that you are right. It's kind of like it's very sad to hear, but it's
Yeah.
very very noble of Tintwell, and you can see that Sazed has so much respect for her, probably largely because of that, because she was basically just basically just suffered for like so
Right.
much of her life, but she did it because she knew it was for the greater good, and she was in a unique position to be able to bring about the greater good for the keepers. Um,
Yep. Okay. Okay. I think I'm with it. I just wanted to get all that out there because it does change your perception of Tindwyl.
Yeah,
She's not the, hey, I'm going to insert myself into this political environment so that I can have control over the king or whatever. She very much is a servant of her people. She has endured a lot of hardship in order to help her people.
yeah, absolutely.
Now we can talk about exploding heads.
Okay, so the final scene of the part, or at least the second final scene of the part, there's the vote for king, and they're going around the room. The Ska vote for Elend. The or two of
Mostly.
the Ska merchants vote for Set, and everybody else votes for Penrod, which creates a non-majority for anyone, and it's then going to default back to Elend. So Elend wins. And then at the last second, this is after the assassin attack. Then at the last second, the Ska merchants swap to vote for Penrod so that Elend doesn't get it. So at the end of the part, Penrod is the king. And he's supposed to be like the last nobleman besides Elend. Like he's an okay dude as far as old noblemen go from the Final Empire. So that is an okay solution for our heroes at the end of part 3, as far as what could have happened. But there are assassins that stop the vote before that.
Real quick, sorry to interrupt you. I realize we should mention something real quick about Elend before we talk about the assassins. I was throwing some shade in Elend's direction a second ago when I said that he was all noble and doing the right thing, even when it was to his detriment. And then he started using religion as to manipulate the people. He does do something in this scene which is very back on the other side of the honorable and noble side of things, which is allowing those assembly members to change their vote.
Yeah.
There's kind of a drawn out scene there where the people who voted are like, hang on a second, can I change my vote, please? And Elend like has this moment where he makes eye contact with his scholar, and his scholar's like, yeah, that is in the laws. But Elend realizes that he could say no in that moment, that he and his scholar are the only ones who know the law to that level of detail where they know that's allowed. So he thinks to himself, I could say no and no one would know. He doesn't do that.
Yeah.
He does the honorable follow the rule thing of saying, I'm going to allow you to do this. I know full well it's going to take the kingship away from me and hand it to Penrod, but yes, you can change your vote, which seems like really dumb law, by the way. But change your vote, you can do it. Okay, Penrod's king. That maybe bolsters Elend's reputation back up a little bit. So I want to be fair to Elend and mention that after throwing some shade his way earlier.
Yeah. But before they finish the vote and before that final scene, there's assassins that show up. And they're attacking Set and they're attacking Elend. Which would seem to imply that they're from Straff. Is that specifically spelled out? Or do we know?
Somebody guesses that.
I think we know that they're all from Set.
Oh, because they're
right.
It's the Allomancer assassin group, right?
Well,
from Set, like from Straff. That's what we're assuming.
Yeah,
I think so. I will say,
I believe so.
'cause Set gets attacked, has to like flee for his life.
Right.
However, I also would not put it beyond Set to him having cooked this up to somehow benefit himself. Not quite sure how this benefits him because he loses the vote anyway, but I'm maybe it's Straff, probably.
Yeah, I do think it's likely Straff. I think this is supposed to be his Allomancer child army. So Vin is defending Elend and uses pewter to gouge a guy's eye out. And then you're like, ew, that was gross. And then while you're still thinking about that, an even more graphic death approaches, and she duralumin pewter head smashes through a guy's head all over Elend and his white shirt. Which made me think, as I'm listening to this, I was like, wow, that was very violent. And it's a common consensus among the Cosmere fans that Stormlight should be an extended animated series, and Mistborn should be live action movies. That of course there are other opinions out there, but those two are the predominant feelings among fans, is that Stormlight should be like a long drawn out animated series, and Mistborn should be live action. And then it made me think, wow, if you did this live action, that would be horrendous. That would be incredibly not PG-13. So then it made me think, this looks and sounds a lot like what Arcane did with their animation. If you guys have seen Arcane, they did a very interesting animation style, but and did gore in a way where it wasn't like incredibly graphic, but they certainly didn't hold back on gore. So it made me lean more, this scene specifically made me lean more towards Mistborn as an animated like anime series. I didn't give that adaptation much weight before this scene, but as I was thinking about that, I was like, this sounds like a lot like Arcane. Anyway,
I would be very fascinated to learn what Brandon Sanderson would do with a visual depiction of this.
yeah.
Let's say, let's say let's say a Mistborn movie is what's happening, which a lot of people are wondering if that is what's happening right
Well,
now. That
we'll
they've
pause real
written.
quick. The writer's strike disassembled
Oh,
the plans. So there was like almost confirmed Mistborn movie coming. The writer's strike completely took it to ground zero. So anyway.
yeah, yep, that would do it. So, let alternate reality, writer's strike does not happen, and Brandon is now producer of a Mistborn movie, where he has been instrumental in writing the script and has a large say in how they're making this movie. What does he advise this scene looks like? I
Yeah.
would be fascinated to hear that. Would he lean into a accurate and very gory depiction of this, or would he intentionally maybe veer in a different direction and say, maybe go down a path of that that rather graphic scene described in a book does not necessarily need to be depicted in violent detail in a live action picture.
I mean, so this story compared to the others we've read, except maybe like the Forests of Hell short story, um, it's kind of a grim, dark fantasy story. It's not very happy. There's a lot of stuff that have happened that may not necessarily be gore. I mean, there's plenty of gore. There's plenty of like gross scenes. Um, but I don't know. I feel like the audience that this story attracts, and that honestly, a lot of the style of the story is just darker than some of Brandon Sanderson's other stories. Um, I think it's okay to tone that back for a visual movie or show. I imagine it would be a live action movie as well, but either way, I think it's fair to tone it back because it is a bit much. But I mean, being honest, I feel like that's where a lot of film and media is today. There's like the Game of Thrones shows where they don't pull any punches as far as gore or um, unsettling images and things like that. I'm not saying that's what I want for sure, but I think it's okay to make this still a bit dark, and have that style. And I know that y'all aren't saying it needs to just be happy-go-lucky, or anything like that, but I think that's just part of the style of this story and what attracts, in that being an aspect that kind of may attract some people to it. I will say, also, I was not ready for the progression of logic that Brandon Sanderson had in this fight, where he was like, well, punching wouldn't do anything to a thug. So I pointed my finger and just like right into the eye. I was like, oh, okay, wow. Okay, that's how you beat a thug, I guess. that was a quick progression, and I don't exactly want to look at that image on, especially in live action. So, you know,
Isn't that how you're supposed to defend yourself from a shark attack? Like, don't
Yes.
try to punch it. It's got too thick a skin. You're supposed to stab it in the eyes with your fingers.
Or
yeah, I think
you're supposed to shove your fist up its nose, because then it like backs up. Is the thought as well?
I thought they couldn't swim backward.
Well, yeah, they can't swim backwards, but they can like thrash backwards.
I'll just try both and compare and
Yeah,
contrast next time.
let me know. I'll give you some
I'm
feedback.
yeah. I'll try that next time.
And then try it on a thug and compare the differences there too.
Okay, that should work.
Anything else before a theme for part 3? All right, Eliot, what do you got for us?
Yeah, another theme for the part. Just trying to find some kind of topic that ties our chapters that we read through in part 3 here together. The word I came up with for this one is politicking. Specifically politicking with a K in there. One, because I've always thought that word was fascinating. It seems wrong, but pretty
Where does
sure it's a real word.
where does the K come from? It kind of just appears.
Yeah, it seems rather random, but I guess you have to have it in there in order for it to be pronounced politicking. But yes, but specifically that action of trying to maneuver the political scene to your benefit, politicking. That felt like the core of this part 3. Ellen's doing it, Set is doing it, Vin is worried about it, it's causing division. It seemed like all of this just, revolved around those political machinations, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. They're all pawns on a chessboard in this part.
Sounds good. You want your mini rant behind a Stormlight spoiler or no?
I should probably go now with my mini rant.
Okay. Didn't know if you wanted to
I
reference other books or not.
No, no. Well, I will, but in generic senses and not spoilery specific ways. I'll if you're one of our Patreon supporters, you get access to some extra channels in our Discord, and one of those Discord channels is our live reactions channels, which is where we often will post some of our live thoughts as we read the book. So, I'll be laying in bed at night reading the book, and if I come across something crazy, I'll set the book down and go dump some of my thoughts in the Discord channel. And I did that the other week, a couple weeks ago. And if you guys are in that channel, you know what I'm about to get into. And I took a pause in the middle of part 3 here to kind of reflect on this whole book so far, because I realized I've got to a place that I have not been in a Brandon Sanderson story to date. And I think this is our 11th book or 11th story that we've read so far, maybe even more. It might be 12, 11 or 12. This is the first time that I have gotten halfway. We're 400 pages into this book, and I'm setting the book down going, this book is noticeably less interesting than any other Brandon Sanderson book I have read. And I feel like I've read a fair amount now. And I feel like something's got to be wrong about this. I I have full faith in Brandon's ability as a storyteller. We've read a bunch of his books and they've been fantastic. Like these books we've read, even the ones that I don't like as much, are still top tier of the fantasy genre as a whole. There are not many writers that I will put up at the same level as Sanderson. And so I have a lot of faith in him. I have faith that he's going to make me look like an idiot for what I'm about to say with the ending of the book he's about to give me. But man, this book has been a slog. This book has been a painful slog. And it I realize this might sound a little bit weird because we've talked in a positive manner about a lot of this book so far. And don't get me wrong, I've been enjoying it. I have been, and there have been a lot of elements that I'm enjoying digging into. And there's been a lot of there's been a lot of action, maybe even more so than in some other books. There's been other books that would be, if you look at the actual pacing, other books may be slower. This one is not necessarily too slow. It's just I don't feel nearly as interested about where this story is going than other books. And I'm trying to figure out why. I feel like this entire book is a extended setup for wherever we're going. And I'm not super invested in it. I like Elland. I like his story that we're on. I like that we're exploring his character. I just I'm trying to figure out what I'm missing. And the only thing I can come up with is I think what I'm missing is deep dives into the lore. In every other book I can think of, specifically Stormlight, and I won't go into any spoilers. There are long extended sections where not a whole lot is happening, where you're gonna endure a lot of conversations between characters where they're just talking about stuff. Not a whole lot of big exciting things are happening. But the big difference between those books and this one is in those long, boring echelon conversations, I'm learning things. I'm learning interesting things. What they are talking about are magic systems. They're talking about the histories of people groups. They're talking about weapons and I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but lots of very fascinating things that I realize bore a lot of people, but that's the stuff that I live off of
Right.
is those give me the history lesson. I want to know the 15-page explanation of why that creature behaves like it does. And I think what I'm missing is that this book is not giving me that. All I've gotten so far are some very limited bits and pieces about ferrochemy. We have learned a little bit more about ferrochem in this book so far, but that's kind of it. That's kind of it. I'm looking back over the last 400 pages we've read. I'm trying to think, what have I added to my knowledge about Scadrial? And the answer is concretely, we've come up with some crazy theories and things like that. We're wondering about the mist and the deepness and things like that. But actual, I've been told this is really small and it's becoming painful for me. And I hate to say this. I really do because I am enjoying this book, but way less than every other book we've read so far. Way less.
I I do want to respond, but I'm gonna have to put it behind Stormlight spoilers because I do want to um compare it in depth with Stormlight, like you're alluding to. So I will go ahead and go into Stormlight spoiler stuff unless you want to respond without Stormlight spoilers, Paul.
No, nope. I don't have anything. Not without
I'll
spoilers, so I'm ready.
I'll say one last thing before we dismiss our Mistborn only readers. I'll reiterate, I have full faith that this is going to turn around. I've seen lots of you guys out there rate this book highly.
Yeah,
You know how we do those, rate the books S tier, A tier, B tier, all that. Well of Ascension seems fairly consistently top half
yeah.
of a lot of people's Cosmere ratings. And I'm looking at all that going, I trust Sanderson. I trust all of you guys. Surely, surely there's a Sanderlanche just a
Oh,
few pages away that's going
right.
to make me recant everything I'm saying right now.
Well, but there's a difference between a book leaving a good taste in your mouth and being a slog. It can be both, right?
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
so just because you do have faith in the Sanderlanche doesn't discount. You don't have to you don't have to recant what you're saying is that up until this point it's been a slog for you. Like both can be true.
mhm. And I'm really interested to see where this book is going because if we were to stop and rate this book right now, it would be way below every other Cosmere book we've read. Like I would be pretty harsh on rating this book if we were to stop right now.
Yeah,
So the Sanderlanche has a lot to do for me. I'll just leave it at that. I have faith it will, but it has a lot to do.
yeah. So, it's full Stormlight spoilers. even though I don't think I'm really going to be talking about back half books. But I like what you did and directly comparing it to the Way of Kings. So for a lot of readers, the Way of Kings is a slog. I would absolutely not classify the Way of Kings as a slog, but because of what you're saying is what we're learning is interesting to me in the Way of Kings. Let's talk about Mistborn. We are now at the end of part 3. We are now halfway through Mistborn Era 1. Tell me one thing of culture about anything outside of Luthadel. One. Tell me one thing about the Southern Dominance.
People live there.
South.
People live there, and some of them died, and Sazed found them and then ran back. And that's all we've seen outside.
Yep. We know the only thing we know outside of Luthadel is the caves, the pits of Hath-Sin, and the Terrace people. Those are the 3 things that we've spent even a little bit of time on. And we keep getting it reiterated to us that the Final Empire is huge. Like, it takes months to travel from the Southern Dominance to the Northern Dominance, and Luthadel is fairly small in comparison to the rest of the Empire. Show me that. Like, I want to know the stakes of the Lord Ruler's death, because all of the time we've spent so far is in Luthadel. I want to know, and I mentioned this back in book 1. I want to know at the book 1 wrap up, I think. I want to know what the Lord Ruler's death meant for an average Ska family in Set's brain. Like, I want an interlude of the dude at the bottom of the pits of Hath-Sin that we met when Kelsier jumped down there. Do you guys remember that guy? We get Kelsier destroying the A-Team in the bottom of the pits of Hath-Sin from the point of view of some random dude. I want an interlude of him in the Eastern Dominance settling down with a family and having a life. Like, I want to know that what we did in the book 1 meant something for someone. And I think the main difference between Stormlight and this is interludes give you such a better frame of reference for what is happening, and Sanderson's publishers and editors told him, take that out. Because he always says, The Way of Kings the Stormlight Archive is the series I wanted to write. Mistborn is the series that my editor my publisher let me write. They told me, take this, cut it in half, take out stuff, we'll publish that. So that's what we have. We don't have time to learn about shard blades in Yakaved and the number of shard blades in Yakaved, because I feel like that's like a fairly important fact to realize how powerful the Alethi are on the Shattered Plains. You need to know that 80% of all of Roshar's like natural resources are in Alethkar fighting the Parshendi. That's how important the Alethi are. I don't know how important the Lord Ruler was. I really don't. We haven't seen anything outside of Luthadel. That's my mini rant on top of Eliot's mini rant.
And the other thing, maybe in Brandon's defense, could be I'm curious if this book is going to suffer from middle book syndrome.
Yeah,
in
for sure.
that it is a trilogy, and this is a middle book. Is this book gonna serve? Is its main purpose going to be to get us from book 1 to book 3? Is it book 1 introed us to all this? We had a great time learning about allomancy, discovering what metals did what. Kelsier had a very exciting story. We were very engaged in that. It was very emotional when he died. There's epic things that are going to happen in book 3. Vin's got to save the world, become the new hero of ages, whatever. And book 2 is just, yeah, we got to kill some time until we get there. Maybe. I hope not. I hope that Brandon found a way to make his middle book more exciting and that we aren't just kind of stuck in the in between times. But as of right now, it feels like that.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add, Paul?
I do. And the truth is, I do agree with Eliot a bit that it's not the most exciting, like in this moment. And I honestly I didn't think about why. I didn't think about that how even in quote unquote like boring parts of some of our other books, we're learning something new most of the time. Like we're seeing something, we're being shown something. It's all leading to something, you know. And as Eliot mentioned, he may read 2 more pages and be like, "Oh, okay, like never mind," kind of thing, you know. That is a common thing that we see Brandon Sanderson. Like one of the things that you hear about negatively about Brandon Sanderson is that you have all this buildup and it's kind of slow, and then everything happens at once. We're about to start part 4, right? And that's usually when things start to get a little more interesting.
Right.
But I do agree. I do agree that it is kind of a slog at this stage. It's like there's two armies on your doorstep, and the nation's a bit in disarray. But like, it's kind of been that way for a little bit. So we're like, okay. When do we actually get to see how all this breaks down and how?
When do I
everything
really
works,
need to care
you know?
about that? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And I wonder too if it could be Brandon has grown his writing since this. Maybe, Mistborn 1, he didn't necessarily need to keep us entertained the whole time because everything was new. We were brand new to Scadrial. We were brand new to Allomancy, Feruchemy. We were constantly learning new things. I wonder if after Well of Ascension, he learned, oh, I need to make sure that even in the slow parts, I'm still feeding them tidbits. It's okay to have slow parts if I continue to drop little nuggets along the way so that you have a trail of crumbs to follow. Because I feel like I always had that in Stormlight. There were slow times, there were even boring sections, but there were always crumbs to chase. Here, I think that's what I'm missing is I've got questions, I've got theories, but I don't really feel like I have crumb to chase in through this section. And maybe he learned to add that.
Anything else?
I guess I got.
All right. We shall enter part 4 of the Well of Sin. This book has 6 parts, by the way. I think this is like
Yes.
the
Yes.
yeah.
I know.
What?
It breaks my brain. It hurts my brain.
What a
Don't-
face by
yeah.
Eliot. That did not disappoint.
Yes, I know. I had the same face whenever I first realized that.
Yes, this may be the first Sanderson book where there's part 6.
Is that allowed?
Yeah, it's not palindromic at all, for sure. Yeah, so entering part 4 next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Eliot.
See ya.
I can't think of a fitting goodbye.